Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today for our event on understanding Google Workspace Domain Transfer. My name is Lauren, and I'm the content manager for the Google Cloud community. And joining us today is Google Cloud Technical Account Manager, Gayu Prima Picardi, who will be leading the session content and answering your questions. Questions are encouraged today, so please feel free to add those into the YouTube chat box, and we'll be sure to get to them either in the chat or at the end of the presentation. And we also have a few pre-submitted questions that we'll cover as well. In addition, we're excited to share a customer conversation with Roman Spantgar, the product owner of global collaboration at Randstad, who will share their journey with domain transfer. So that'll include recommendations, best practices, and just sharing their journey and lessons learned along the way. So I hope you'll enjoy and appreciate that conversation as well. And then lastly, just to say that if we don't get to any of your questions, that you can please share them in the Google Workspace community, and someone from the community or the Workspace team will be happy to help you out. And the link to the YouTube in the YouTube description is to the community there. So you can go ahead and check that out. And we hope to stay connected there after the event and in between our next sessions there. All right, with that, I will hand it over to you, Gayu, to take us through the content today.
All right, so thank you so much, Lauren. So thank you everyone for joining this session. So yeah, before we deep dive into the topic, I'd like to properly introduce myself. So I'm Gayu. I'm Technical Account Manager in Southeast Asia. Been with Google for almost 3 years now, and I'm also a Workspace Domain Transfer Champion for Japan. So today we will cover these following topics. I'll explain about what is Google Workspace Domain Transfer actually, how is the process overview and user experience for the transfer, and as mentioned by Lauren, there will be a customer success story from Randstad, and then we will proceed through the Q&A live session afterwards. Right, so what is actually the Workspace Domain Transfer? So if you haven't heard about this before, so Workspace Domain Transfer, with these services, we merge two Google Workspace environments with no business interruptions and without data leaving the Google environment. How does it work? So basically, we will list down all the secondary domain and aliases domain as the transfer domains here. And like any transfer domains will be eligible for the transfer. These transfer domains, so both the secondary and the aliases, will become secondary domain on the destination domain. In order to make the current primary domain eligible to transfer, it must be converted to a secondary domain. To do so, you need to define a placeholder domain in the source and then promoting this placeholder domain to primary in the source domain. So any entities, for example, like users, groups, mail, calendars, shared drives, my drives, and any resource calendars associated with these transfer domains will be moved to the destination. We will call this as the transfer entities of the transfer domains. And for the organizational unit or the OU structure itself, whatever OU defined in the source will be recreated under a designated OU that will be called as the transfer route OU in the destination domain. That being said, any users from the source under that organizational structure will be moved to the destination OU. So what are the benefits of this? First, data never leaves Google. So there is no actual data migration, despite the name is a transfer, but basically we just change the ownership of Google Workspace of environments. And then the second, entities are left intact. So any user identities, accounts, or application settings are all maintained. Drive links will remain the same, and GCP IAM permissions, if you are using Google Cloud Platform as well on top of Workspace, are not impacted. The next one is content sharing is retained. So any sharing with individual users and groups is not modified directly. Documents shared from external parties are preserved as well. That brings us into low operational complexity because there's no data backfills or cut over weekends that needed, and all user transfer will be completed at once, so that will simplify your internal business communications. Typically, the users will be completed in less than 24 hours, but the transfer may take longer depending on the environment size. For example, the number of users involved, groups, and drive files. All in all, there is no downtime in the service. So transfer can be executed during business hours, and non-admin users can operate at like business as usual with little impact while the transfer is in progress. There are some known limitations of the service. First, licenses are not transferred. So you might need to ensure like there are enough matching licenses in the destination compared to the source to support the incoming users from the source itself. Users will be assigned the same licenses in the destination that they had in source. So it is very important for you to ensure they have like-to-like licenses between source and the destinations. Second is all or nothing. So we do not support partial, transfer, or divestitures in this case. The only domain to remain in the source after the transfer is completed is only the placeholder domain, along with its associated superadmins. And then identity merge or deduplication is not supported. So we will not merge the source and destination user accounts. So let's say if a user has 2 accounts, reconciliation must be handled separately. We will not be able to recognize that as a deduplication instead. And then it is also important to note that there is no going back. So we do not have like rollback procedures for this transfer. So actually, the service has been around for a while, with the first transfer completed since August 2017. So up to last year, we have completed more than 185 plus transfers in total, with more than 65K and more than 450 million files in the single transfers. And so apart from domain transfer, you might have heard about Google Workspace Migrate as an alternative in migrating workspace environment. So how does that differ? So in Workspace Migrate, actually the supported content is actually copied. Like all the emails, calendars, contacts, tasks, and drive are actually copied between the environments. But in domain transfer, the supported content is actually moved, not copied between the 2 environments. And as I mentioned previously, while domain transfer is not supporting partial transfer, you can do partial transfer with Workspace Migrate instead. Like both approach here require customer work and more involvement between those parties. But with regards to infrastructure setup and cost, there is no infrastructure setup and cost needed for domain transfers. For partner involvement, it is always recommended to involve partners when you do a Workspace Migrate, but in domain transfer, it is completely optional. And then like for offering for professional services organization or PSO here, so for Workspace Migrate, it's only for the advisory part, but for domain transfer, it is required because only the PSO team can do the execution of the domain transfer, even it is not supported for partner at this moment. So if you're interested to use this transfer, what are the requirements are? First, so neither the source nor the destination might be in the process of undergoing a core service web app process. Transfer may still can proceed, but it will be subject to a 90-day delay. And this can only be evaluated by the Google team. So when you are interested for this engagement, Google team will inform you on this one in this part in the beginning. And then for the source environment, there's a threshold of maximum 75K users that can be addressed here. So if you have like more than these users, then that might not be eligible for this transfer. There are also like some other technical requirements here that you might want to highlight. For example, like Google Voice and then advanced MDM. And you must ensure that your primary domain is actually support of changing the primary domain because you need to swap that with the placeholder later on. As for the destination, it must be out of trial and not exceeds 600 domains and domain aliases after the transfer is completed. It also must not exceed a maximum of 500,000 users after the transfer is complete. Within a single engagement, currently, we can only support up to 12 transfers per engagement. Next, we'll move to the process overview and the user experience. How is a typical domain transfer engagement looks like? So basically, we divide the domain transfer process into these 4 stages. First, we will start with scoping, where we understand your basic details of the transfer. For example, like how many domains that will be involved, and how is your details for each domain that will be transferred later on. We will do the eligibility check for your transfer request and see if this is qualified for a domain transfer engagement in this stage. Next, once we pass with the eligibility check, we'll move to the kickoff. In this stage, we officially start the transfer process and we gather all the stakeholders for a deep dive into the technical aspects of the transfer. Next, we'll move to the preparation stage where we'll share you like all the pre-transfer and post-transfer checklist, and we will ask you to complete them. In this stage, we also prepare the source and destination environments technically and organizationally for the execution of the production transfer itself. In the final stage, or the execution itself, we will actually conduct the production transfer, and like all the entities from the source will be moved to the destination. So let's go a bit deeper on the preparation stage. During this stage, customer will be asked to complete several things that can be run in asynchronous way. The first one, you need to complete the try run blockers, which covers admin verification and domain verification. This is important for us to verify your access and ownership over the transfer domains that you claim you have to control. Once the try run blockers is completed, we can move to execute the try runs to verify the completion of pre-transfer task. This is a continuous loop, and try run is basically a simulated execution of the domain transfer process that will surface all outstanding pre-transfer tasks that must be completed before the transfer can be proceeded. You need to keep doing this loop until you get a fully passing try run and you get a green light to execute the production transfer itself. Once you executed the first try run, you can move forward with the scheduling for the production transfer. So as I mentioned before, there are some pre-transfer tasks that you need to complete before you can proceed with the production transfer. Source and destination environments have their own tasks that must be completed before a transfer can be authorized. For example, here and for the source and destination task, like you might need to select your transfer options. And then like you might need to audit existing policies and settings because some of them might not be transferred during the production transfer. There are some examples for source environment tasks as well. For example, like removing unsupported licenses. So during the dry run, this will be surfaced if there are any unsupported licenses and you might need to remove them. You might need to also create the placeholder admin and promote them into the primary account owner. If you are using Vault, you might be required to establish an indefinite Vault retention and backup some artifacts before moving forward with the transfer. Last but not least, you may need to swap the primary domain to promote the placeholder so we can switch that and move the entities in the destination. And there are some examples for destination environment tasks as well here, like for example, to provision enough licenses for the transfer users and ensure that these licenses will be applied to transfer users as expected. You will be asked to create the transfer route OU as well, as I mentioned in the beginning, and to establish appropriate policies and settings in the destination. This might take some time based on prior experience, so we recommend you to starting on them immediately in order to surface issues as early as possible. Do not worry about the details of this because you can find it on our Help Center documentation later on as well. So what happened post the transfer? So once we execute the production transfer, there will be a validation audits period that typically will be done in 5 to 7 days post the production transfer. During that period, you will be asked to not deleting any users. And then once that complete, so your Google team will inform you once the validation audit period is completed. And once that complete, you can do the deletion of users. There are also like several tasks that both environments might want to complete post the transfer. For example, like reassigning the admin roles to source admins, and then like re-implementing any fault artifacts as well as auditing all actions made by domain transfer predicts in audit logs. And once the transfer is complete, the source environment will contain only the placeholder domain and the placeholder admin. Please note that domain transfer process renders the source environment unsuitable for Google Workspace production use. While now at first, it is expected for the source to be deleted soon once the post-transfer audit is completed, unless it is needed to administer an associated Google Cloud Platform organization. So how's the typical domain transfer engagement looks like? So within this timeline, in the first week, you will start with the kickoff. And during this time, we will explain how the end-to-end engagement will look like and the technical details. We'll also share with you the transfer checklist, as I mentioned, that comprises both the pre-transfer and the post-transfer activity list for you to complete it. You can use this transfer checklist as your reference throughout the domain transfer engagement. During this week, we will also ask customers to complete the try run blockers, which comprises of admin and domain verification. In the following week, we will move forward with the preparation, which are doing the first try run, scheduling, as well as completing the pre-transfer task. We will keep the process in loop once we got a fully passing try run, and then we will move forward with the production transfer itself. Please take note that you need to swap the primary domain at least day -2 before the scheduled production transfer, and you need to have a fully passing dry run at least day -1 before the production transfer as well. Once you do the execution, there will be a 5 to 7 days post-transfer audit period, as I mentioned before. And once the post-transfer audit period is completed, you will return to your business as usual. So how's the user experience during the transfer? First, admin access will be revoked once the production transfer is started. So both the source and destination admins will be blocked from using the admin console and APIs for a portion of the transfer. Once the admin access is re-granted again, your Google team will inform you once that has been done. And then status updates will be provided via email and will include updates on all phases of the transfer as they complete. For end users, users can continue to work uninterrupted while the transfer is executing. It's just the admin access that will be revoked, but for non-admin access, it is completely business as usual. User sessions are not invalidated as a part of the transfer, and no transfer users will be forced to log back in due to this process. And after the transfer, it is almost business as usual for admins, except for deleting the users, as I mentioned previously. So source admins are not automatically re-provision their admin roles, and destination admins will have to manually re-establish admin roles for source users. After admin privileges are restored for destination admins, all operations are allowed except for deletion of users. You may not delete any users, as I mentioned before, just after post-transfer audits are completed, which is typically in 5 to 7 days post the transfer. There are some known issues that you might want to know as well that occur for a period of time, and these are documented in our help center. Most of them are cosmetic and non-significantly impacting. But in case you encountered any issues that still pertains for more than 48 hours, feel free to reach out to our Google support and open a ticket for help. All right, I'll be moving to the next customer success story. Hand over to you, Lauren.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information, and thank you everyone for your questions. We will be sure to get to them, so thanks for hanging with us. But first, we are going to share a conversation we recently had between our Google Cloud Customer Success Manager, Carolina Hartley, and also with the product owner of global collaboration at Randstad, Roman Spantgar. So in this conversation, you'll learn about their journey with domain transfer, including recommendations and best practices, and then we'll be sure to jump into your Q&A. So thanks for sticking with us and keep those questions coming. All right, here we go.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to this domain transfer conversation. My name is Carolina Hartley. I'm a customer success manager based in Paris. I'm here with our guest speaker, Roman Spantgar from Randstad. Welcome, Roman.
Hi, Carolina.
Hi. So we've worked with each other for a few years now, but I'd love for you to share who you are with our audience. Where are you located? A little bit about yourself, your current role.
Thank you for having me. My name is Roman Spantgar, and I'm the product owner for the global collaboration, specifically responsible for Google Workspace worldwide within Randstad, and I'm based in Amsterdam.
What did you decide? Why did you decide to embark on this domain transfer versus workspace migration or any other third party? What sparked that?
Sure, happy to share that background info. So Randstad is the world's largest talent company operating in 39 countries, and we've been on the forefront of digital transformation, which is why we chose Workspace solution back in 2012. And at that moment, we chose to enable Workspace for each of our individual countries due to technical and organizational needs. So fast forward to 2021. The market has changed and our strategy has shifted, which is when we embarked on a mission to consolidate all of those separate instances under a single workspace instance running on Randstad.com. And being a global company, we had to ensure to minimize the impact on our end users in all the regions, so not to have a downtime and other technical difficulties. One of these is a technical one and revolves around the sharing of files on Drive. Traditional tools impact file sharing when these are migrated. So we partnered with Google to overcome this challenge, and specifically with professional services team, like we've done in other areas such as Chromebooks, GCP, Workspace, to help us with this challenge. Professional services team onboarded us to a domain transfers beta program, and over the course of 2 years, we've performed about 36 migrations together with Google and our partners, and we have successfully concluded that project in March of this year.
Wow. Well, thanks for sharing that. Certainly no dull moment. The last 24 months must have had your hands
definitely
quite busy. So were there any surprises along the way that you'd care to share with us?
Sure. I think as with any migration project, be it personal or related, or IT related, you only realize how much stuff you have collected over time when you actually need to move it. So we did have a number of surprises during the migrations where we would find resources, be it data or hardware, that were unknown to the global or the local teams. But the great thing here was that flexibility of the teams enabled us to quickly adapt to these changes and execute within the scope and within the time.
So what was your experience overall if you had to sum it up?
I believe that this product is a great addition to the Workspace service offering. It gives us the flexibility to quickly onboard new companies that are using Workspace with little to no downtime or impact to our general population. So I think existing and new customers would be very happy with this offering.
Great. So if there was someone in the school that was thinking about doing this, what advice would you give to them?
I think if you embark on this journey, involvement of local teams, if you work in this in a global setup, involvement of local teams is crucial. Creation of a blueprint for your migration with key milestones that you can repeat and improve over time is another one. But also taking enough time to prep the migrations, because in the end, the migration itself is just a few hours of waiting time before everything is done. But it's the preparation that is the key. So we took at least 3 to 4 weeks for our migrations, depending on the country that we would migrate. And I think the last one, but not least one, is to make sure that your communication and the change management teams are involved from day one.
Yep. Being in change, we know all about that. So
Exactly.
it sounds quite technical, all of this. Is there any experience that is required before embarking on domain transfer? No PhD, hopefully, needed.
No, luckily for us, it wasn't. So as a customer, you don't need the technical expertise per se. Of course, the involvement of your Google partner and Google itself, but the PSO team made sure to guide us along the way and helped us in every step of the journey.
Great to hear that PSO is there rooting for you along the way, holding your hand. So if, with hindsight, if there was one advice that you could walk away and give to our future customer, what would that be?
I think looking back on all of these migrations, one thing to take into account, and I think this is something has to do something that because of the fact that I am based in Europe and we've done a lot of our migrations in Europe, is to take into account the US holidays. Because of course, the PSO team, the Google team based in US, we've planned one of our migrations on Thanksgiving Day, which was not a good idea looking in hindsight. So take that as a good experience for us, but also for any other customers that are planning to do this.
And what are the eventual benefits for you as Randstad and maybe as a product owner and end user having done a domain transfer?
So I think that the benefit of having all of our instances in a single domain is twofold. One, on an organizational level, it enables a frictionless experience when it comes to collaborating together, finding colleagues worldwide, and gives a general improvement to our backend systems. Workspace is a fairly large, we have a fairly large deployment of Workspace, and a lot of backend systems and business systems tap into that or work from Workspace platform. So having that centralized in a single instance makes a great addition to the overall experience for the company. As a product owner, it gives me a massive advantage to oversee how experiences are shaped in regions, and I can tap into that to course correct or learn something from our local teams that we can then share with all of the companies worldwide.
Great. So it sounds like a win-win for the organization and for yourself. And lastly, the best for last, if you had a magic wand and what would you change from this experience, or what could we, Google, do to improve your journey?
I think one point of feedback that we have also shared with the professional services team and also with the domain transfer team is improvements in the ability to migrate licenses from the source to destination domain. That's something that is, I think, a good improvement point for the future to work on.
Wonderful. Well, I think that was a pretty good 360 view to explaining how domain transfer works. I hope that was useful to the audience, and I look forward to connecting with you and talking domain transfers. Thank you all.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Thank you, Roman. Thank you, Carolina, for sharing that story. I hope that you learned a bit from it and got some insights. I know particularly that when you're working with global regions, that there's a lot of considerations there to keep in mind. So thank you for sharing that story. And thank you all for your questions. I see a lot of them have come through. So that is what we have up next. So let's dive into your questions. We did have a couple pre-submitted questions, which I believe may cover some of those that are in the chat as well. So we're going ahead and start with those, but don't worry, we will get to your questions in the chat. So our first one is, what is the qualification or eligibility criteria to use this tool for a customer? And then some follow-up questions here related to that are, how does this apply to Google for nonprofits and EDU accounts? And then is Workspace domain transfer available for partners to use or to lead with their customers? Or is it solely done by the Workspace professional services team?
All right. So thanks for the pre-submitted questions here. So currently, Workspace Domain Transfer is available for some customer segments and delivered by Google Professional Services Organization, or PSO, only. So partners, unfortunately, at this point of time, are currently not able to execute domain transfer by themselves. And if let's say you are interested in leveraging this service, please reach out to your Google representative, and we will conduct an eligibility check as part of the scoping stage in the beginning to check on your request.
Perfect. Right. All right. So our next question is, we are on a secondary domain and would like to switch to our own primary domain. How do we accomplish this?
So basically we have like a documentation on like the steps to change your primary domain. So this is actually not particularly related just for domain transfer, but this is like more workspace questions in general. But yes, we do have documentations on the steps there, and you can follow this link. Thanks, Lauren, for providing that on the chat.
Perfect. All right. Is there a limit to the number of users that can be transferred on this tool?
Exactly. So this has been covered on the transfer requirements. So just like repeating here. So the maximum thresholds are 75K users in the source, and the maximum threshold for the destination users are 500K after the transfer. So you might need to consider these numbers before doing the transfer.
Sounds good. All right. What is the best approach for an organization using SSO with a third-party provider such as Okta for both source and target tenants?
All right. So I saw similar questions on the group chat as well. So hopefully this answers your question. So for third-party identity providers, for example, like Okta, that needs to be updated to account for transfer users within the destination. And just take note here that configuration of third-party systems is outside the scope of domain transfer. So you might need to perform a separate assessment before executing the transfer. I also like providing the complete list of domain transfer watch points you might want to revert. So these are the links.
Perfect. And that resource is now in the chat as well, if you'd like to take a look there.
Right, perfect. Thanks, Laura.
All right, I think just a couple more from our pre-submitted. How can we transfer domains from on-premise to Workspace?
All right, so domain transfer actually only caters Workspace to Workspace migration, but we do have some other alternatives to cater Workspace migrations. Just for example, like Google Workspace Migrate, as I initially mentioned in the beginning, but we have a documentation that provide you the complete list and the comparison between all the Workspace migration product alternatives. You can refer to the link here. Yep.
Awesome.
So you might need to, it really depends on your source environment as well as the number of users that you had in both environments. So you might need to check that one.
Makes sense. So I'd like to know how pricing is calculated. Is it by user or domain, or is it based on the amount of data?
So the pricing is calculated based on the number of transfer. So as long as you do a transfer from one source to one destination domain, that will be counted as one SKU. Yep.
Okay. All right. And our last one for now. That was actually our last question for the pre-submitted. So here are some additional resources that we'll get to in just a moment, but I do want to make sure we're getting to your Q&A. So first question that we had from the chat is, are there any blockers or limitations if the source workspace environment has tied any offline commitments, such as a Meet offline commitment or a workspace account bought through a Google domain?
All right, so thanks, Gibson, for the question here. I'm not sure if I understand commitments in this context correctly, but while we do the eligibility checklist on the beginning, and before we do the try run, actually it will surfacing all the constraints that might not be supported during the transfer. So I would suggest that if let's say you are interested in using this transfer, worry not. Just like submitting the request first, and then we will do the eligibility check to see if there are some constraints that you might need to address first before you are eligible to do the transfer. So yeah, so it will be like a case by case basis. I cannot say that like, okay, so one particular transfer will not be supported, so it's not work that way. It really case by case basis. So we need to assess that at the beginning for the eligibility check first. Hope that answer your question. You are on mute, sorry.
Yep. And if any of you have additional context to provide in the chat, please feel free to do that, and we can loop around and get to it as well. Thanks, Gayu.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
All
right.
right.
So,
Yep.
moving to the next question.
Yes. So this one is from Mitchell. What happens to policies set on either the destination or source domains?
All right. So I saw there are some similar answers for this. So for policy, mostly it is not supported. So it is up to the customer discretion to kind of like having a separate assessment for that. But we do have some lists on what's supported and what's not supported, as well as watch points and known issues here. So in particular for organization policy questions, let me just copy the link here. Hold a second. So you might want to refer to this help center for you to check.
Here you go. Dropped into the chat there.
All right. Thanks, Lauren. Yep. So that's for what's not supported with regards to the policy.
Okay. Perfect. All right. Our next question is, must have a primary domain that supports changing of the primary domain. What are the requirements for this? Is there a way to check if the primary domain is eligible for changing?
Yep, so it really depends on your domain registrar. So I would suggest to check like which domain registrar that you are actually using. Yep, and we will also like kind of like mention this during the eligibility check in the beginning once you start the engagement.
Sounds good. So one question is, what will happen to Chrome OS licenses?
Good question. So yeah, I covered that. Actually, for Chrome OS, it is not supported in domain transfer. But for more details on what you need to do with Chrome OS license, it's basically maybe you will be asked to remove that before the transfer and then need to re-enroll again in the destination once the transfer is completed. But for more details, it is also covered on the same link that I provided previously. So yeah.
All right, thank you. Are there any API quota limits that can be hit depending on the amount of calls needed, such as email artifacts or drive artifacts?
Yeah, I'm not sure if this question is in particular for domain transfer actually, but if with regards to domain transfer, there is like no such API quota limitation as far as my understanding. So yeah, I'm not sure if this actually applies for this.
Okay, sounds good. And if you have any additional context there, please feel free to follow up in the chat.
All right, sure.
All right, where to find requirement, watch point, or limitation documentation for Google Workspace domain transfer, and perhaps that is included in the link that you already provided?
Yeah, so the link I provided previously, it's what's not supported in domain transfer, but there is like another link here for what's actually supported in domain transfer. And I think Lauren already provided for the watch points as well, previously covered in the pre-submitted Q&A. So this is for what's supported.
Awesome. Yep, so we'll just drop that in again as a reference so that you can
Yes, and there is also like another links for the known issues that you might find useful as well here. Hold on.
All right. Thanks, Gayu. And then the second link here is for known issues. All right. Thanks, everyone, for your patience there. We'll move right along to our next question. Are there any restrictions on which SKU the domain is tied to for both source and destination?
All right. I think for these questions, you can revert to the unsupported, what's not supported link previously. Yep. So you can see like the list of Google products, Google Workspace products SKU that are not supported for domain transfer. And worry not, as I mentioned, as a part of eligibility check and the try run process as well, that will be highlighted if that's not supported.
Awesome. All right, perfect. And then just a few more questions. Thanks all. I tried to use a shadow domain in order to switch from existing to the new domain, which is more effective in technical points. And then on top of that, I think there was a follow-up comment to explain that the condition was there are 2 admin consoles that the user has. So I was wondering which is more effective through that time.
All right. I'm not sure if I understand the questions correctly, like for the shadow domain here. Yeah. So I don't really think it's a use case that can be covered by domain transfer in this case, but let's say if you can elaborate more, maybe you can post this question in the community as well, and we can check it up later on for more context.
Sounds good. And yep, just as a reference, again, that link to the community is in the YouTube description. So if you do have additional context to share, that's a great place to do it. And we'll be keeping an eye on it there. And others from the community will be happy to help as well. Okay, so we do have a clarification question. It sounds like transfer is synonymous to merge. Is that accurate to say, or any additional context you want to provide there?
Yes. So thanks for the question. So in the beginning, we do mention that we actually like merge 2 workspace environments. So we merge and then like we change the ownership of the source domain to the destination domain. So that's basically a domain transfer says.
Sounds good. Okay, and then I will hop back just one more time to Selena, who shared related to the previous question. In the sense of permissions from the old domain, the origin companies to the new, and the registrar will become the Google domain source. Does that help clarify?
Yeah. I'm not sure if I get the questions right here, but yeah. So basically, we will not changing like any domain registrar. So we keep it as it is. It's just that it doesn't really depend on which domain registrar that you have, and it doesn't mean that we will change that into Google domain once the transfer is executed. So we keep it as it is. It's just that we change the workspace ownership between these 2 environments. In case that you might want to kind of like having further context and like further questions on that one, just like feel free to post on the community as well, and I'll take a look on that.
Sounds good. Appreciate it. Okay. More of a future, forward-looking question, but curious, are there any plans to make this transfer available for Google partners?
All right, so this is like $1 million questions here. So currently, we don't have a plan in the roadmap yet, but yeah, we'll keep the option open for the time being, and let's see like if we have like make any progress with this one.
Sounds good. Thanks for asking the question, and we'll be sure to keep you posted. Okay, is there any demo of the workspace transfer available?
Currently, unfortunately, not. I'm not sure if this is something that we can work on, but actually, it's a good idea and a good feedback as well. Yeah, let us put this as a good feedback to our team as well and see how we can move forward with this.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Okay. Does re-verification using TXT required, is it required during this process?
All right, so there are two verifications that you need to do within this process. The first one is admin verification. Basically, you just need to show your admin workspace admin console to us, and then like providing your role as well that you are the super admin. That's it. We just like need to prove your ownership of this environment. And then the second is like the domain verification that you might need to do it on the webmaster tools. So there are some options that you can do in the webmaster tool, but as long as you can just like prove your ownership to us that this is actually the environment that you claim you have control to us, then that's okay.
Awesome. All right, and I see we just have one final question for now. So if you do have, oh, we got a few others coming in, so we'll keep them coming until the hour here. I published an app in AppyPie. If I close the app, can I use the domain again? How do I do it?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm the right person to answer this question, unfortunately. Yeah, but maybe I just like defer to anyone that are quite familiar with AppyPie. Unfortunately, I'm doesn't have much knowledge on that one. So yeah.
Yep, that's all right. Again, that might be a great question for the community. If there are others who are doing something similar, you can search for it or start a new question there. Okay. Is there a price calculator available to estimate that helps partners to sell this product?
Yeah, currently not. And thank you for your interest. Actually, I saw like a lot of questions from you as well. Thanks, Cornell. Yeah, so currently we don't have any price calculator for that. But if you kind of like quite interested with the service, feel free to reach out to your Google representatives, and they can help you with the pricing and stuffs here. But as I mentioned in the beginning, currently it can only be executed by Google PSO team, and it's not available for partners to execute by themselves.
Thank you. Okay. Are there any concerns for users who use AppSheet?
Yeah, so you might want to check on the what's not supported and what's supported list there. I think we covered AppSheet on that part as well. There are like some items that you might want to highlight. So yeah, so feel free to refer to that link and then like check if there's anything that you want to do after that.
Sounds good. All right. Well, if you have any other questions, I believe we covered all of them that have come through so far. So please feel free to continue asking those. And if we're not able to get to them, again, that community, please use it as a resource. We will be monitoring it along with community members and members of the Google Workspace team. So please do utilize that. We'll take one final question here, and then we'll share some final resources and next steps. What will happen with GCP org or projects while Google Workspace domain is moved or transferred?
All right, so interesting question. So for GCP org projects, there will be no changes to the project itself, as long as you might just want to keep the source. So let's say you are using the source domain for your GCP organization, then you after the transfer, you might need to keep the source just for the GCP org to stay access after that. The very noticeable changes after the transfer is just that you might notice your GCP org name will be changed into your placeholder domain after the swap. So apart from that, like the IAM will not be changed, but it is very advisable for you to do like a separate assessment on the GCP impacts before moving forward with the transfer. But basically, that's it. We also like covered these GCP impacts on our known issues and then like watch points as well on the link that I provided before. So you might want to check out that one.
Awesome. I think we have one more question coming through. So one moment. I've created a few workspace in GCP with different domains, but I want to consolidate all of them. What will be the best method to solve this?
All right. Yeah. So I might need like some more details and context for this one. But yeah, I mean, like I'm not sure like how many domains that are scattered in and which domains actually your GCP currently relies on. So I could not like answer it right away, like what is the best method to solve this. But I think like it is one of the use cases that domain transfer might be able to help. But again, might need like further assessment first and see if it's like eligible to move forward with this.
Great. Thank you so much, Gayu, for that presentation, answering so many questions. It was great to hear from Roman and Carolina at Randstad. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I am just going to pull up a few final resources. We would love to hear from you how you felt about this event, the topic, and if you have any ideas for future sessions. So you can use that second link there to submit our feedback form, which should just take you about 30 seconds to a minute just to share what you thought about today and to provide us with any ideas for future sessions or topics or even resources. We learned today that it would be great to see a demo of this. So that's something that we can take back and consider about delivering. So that's the kind of information we really like to hear. We really appreciate your time and want to make sure that we're catering our content to best meet your needs. And then, as we've been mentioning throughout the session, that community is there as a resource for you to utilize to find answers, to ask questions, and to stay up to date with future sessions like this. And with that in mind, we do have upcoming sessions. So there's a couple happening in the next couple of days around workspace security, the Asia Pacific Workspace Summit covering all topics across workspace. And then on the 25th, we're talking about Smart Canvas and Google Docs, all with live Q&A. So please check that out. Let us know your feedback. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Gayu. Again, do you have any final recommendations or key takeaways that you want to share before we close out today?
Yeah, so thank you everyone. I saw like so many great participation in the Q&A session as well. So it's really great to see everyone interested with this service. Yeah, maybe I think like our help center is your best avenue for that in case you want to know deeper about the service. And as Lauren mentioned as well, in case you have like further questions, further queries about the service, feel free to post that in the community. I think that's the best path for us to move forward there. And we will regularly take notes on that. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. And